For over a century, the race to build the world's tallest building moved at a crawl. Every time a new structure claimed the title, it typically beat the previous record holder by a cautious margin of 5 to 10%. This gradual climb peaked in 2004 with Taipei 101. Reaching just over 500 meters, it was a logical step up from its predecessors. This chart shows the historical progression of skyscraper heights, with decades of steady growth. Then the Burj Khalifa arrives, a massive 62% spike pushing the ceiling to 829 meters. Since 2009, 17 new super-tall structures were built, yet all fall vastly short. It's not for lack of trying. Saudi Arabia planned to beat the record with the Jeddah Tower, aiming for a full kilometer in height, but construction halted, leaving a massive, unfinished core abandoned in the desert. Today, we have better tools, richer investors, and far more advanced computers than we did 15 years ago. So why did the relentless human drive to build higher suddenly hit an unbreakable ceiling? To understand the ceiling, you have to look at the sheer physical violence of extreme altitude. Above 800 meters, air acts less like a breeze and more like a battering ram. Combined with the crushing downward weight of the building itself, these wind forces will easily tear a standard structure apart. Traditional super-tall buildings survive this by compromising. In towers like New York's 432 Park Avenue, architects intentionally leave empty gaps in the structure so the wind can pass freely right through the building. But sacrificing entire floors of premium real estate wastes millions of dollars. To go higher without losing space, structural engineer Bill Baker invented a completely new blueprint, the buttressed core. This diagram shows exactly how the buttressed core deflects that high-altitude wind. The building is shaped like a Y, using 3 wings that act like a massive tripod. They all anchor into a central hexagonal core. Instead of fighting the wind head-on, this aerodynamic shape slices through it. To handle the immense downward weight, that core is anchored by 192 concrete and steel columns, driven 50 meters deep into the earth. The resulting structure is incredibly rigid. It's so stable that the exterior frames comfortably hold 1.2 million large LED lights, turning the outside of the building into the world's largest television screen. By solving the dual threats of crushing weight and violent wind, the buttressed core proved that physical forces were no longer the absolute limit of human engineering. In fact, the engineer behind the Burj Khalifa claims a modified version of this exact core could theoretically support a tower taller than 3 kilometers. But pushing past the current record introduces a new massive hurdle: the physical limits of our standard construction materials. Concrete and steel can only support so much of their own weight before the bottom floors simply collapse under the pressure. To build higher, we would have to abandon traditional materials entirely and weave buildings out of ultralight, hyper-durable alternatives like carbon fiber mesh. Even if we synthesize those materials, we immediately run into a biological wall. Above 1.5 kilometers, the atmospheric pressure drops dramatically. If you took an elevator from the ground floor directly to a 2-kilometer peak, the rapid change in pressure would induce intense altitude sickness. Making that space habitable would require completely sealing and artificially pressurizing the entire structure, an expensive, complex logistical hurdle. Engineering can solve for material limits and air pressure, given enough time and resources. Our actual limit is far more mundane. The absolute limit of megatall construction is strict, unforgiving economics. Spending billions of dollars on a single building requires a guaranteed massive return on investment. The Burj Khalifa was born from a very specific, unique economic desperation. In the late 1990s, Dubai's leaders realized their oil wealth was finite. They needed to rapidly pivot their entire economy into an international hub for tourism and foreign investment. They needed a spectacle to force the world to pay attention. So they gambled $1.5 billion on the tower. The stunt worked flawlessly. It put Dubai on the map, and the surrounding downtown property values skyrocketed so high that the massive construction costs were easily recouped. Contrast that success with almost any other city on the planet. Barely any local government has the combination of vast sovereign wealth and the urgent need to rebrand their entire nation. which makes funding an even taller building an unjustifiable financial risk. Globally, the appetite for extreme height is actually shrinking. The Chinese government recently passed a law strictly banning new buildings taller than 500 meters. They explicitly labeled mega-tall skyscrapers as vanity projects that drain massive amounts of energy and waste public funds. We haven't stopped breaking records because we lack the engineering brilliance or because the wind blows too hard. The record sits untouched because humanity finally reached the ceiling of practical economic utility.